As I'm sure a lot of you guys are aware, Sony has released some live service games in recent memory. Helldivers 2 probably being the most successful one that I could probably think of, in recent memory. Mainly being super successful on PC, but having a pretty decent fan base on their own native platform as well. The numbers skyrocketed to the 400,000 plus mark on Steam DB. The game was no doubt a massive success, even though it had controversy with the signing up of PlayStation that eventually got, Sony bent the knee and said, no, we're not going to do it. Forget it. Even though after that whole controversy, it still has a fairly manageable player base that they can monetize and consider it to be a success. But unfortunately, Sony has also been plagued with other live service games that have completely flopped. And the most notable one would obviously be Concord. Everybody knows that Concord is probably one of the biggest gaming flops in history, losing over, rumored, $400 million plus and refunding everybody on their purchase and becoming basically a laughingstock when it came to not just live service games, but gaming in general. Well, Concord has scarred them so much to the point that even though Sony just can't help themselves and they're sitting here and they're about to admit to all of you that they're going to double down on live service games, they're still referencing Concord and saying that they're promising not to repeat the same mistakes that they did with Concord. And whether or not you believe them, well, I mean, that's solely up to you. So let's get into this video, guys. But of course, before we do, special shout out to the 90,100 of you that subscribe to the channel right now. And the 50% that are not, consider hitting that subscribe today to help me get to 100K. I would greatly appreciate it. So let's talk about it. Sony apparently has doubled down. This article comes from Eurogamer and says they're committed to diverse and resilient. Resilient, I think, is the funniest term here, considering how lack of resilient Concord was. But resilient live service games, including forthcoming Marathon and Fair games, despite the high-profile failures that they've had in the past. During an annual Sony business presentation, CEO Herman Holtz, who, by the way, Herman Holtz is the one that truly pushed to try to get Concord to become a thing. He is the one that made Concord see the light of day. He is the one that made them buy the previous game. Buy the game over the previous studio that owned it. He is the one that really pushed Concord to become a thing. And he is also the one that is trying to now say they're going to double down on live service games. So why is anybody surprised by this, right? When you have an ego like this and you're making multiple millions of dollars yourself, you could think you do no wrong, and you're going to keep doing the same mistake. It's literally the definition of insanity, but whatever. Herman Holtz stated that the company remains committed to building a diverse and resilient portfolio of live service games, which includes the unreleased Marathon, aka Art Raiders, and Fair games, that despite the high-profile live service failures, in addition to controversy with these two forthcoming games, Holtz stated that Sony is building on the success of games such as Helldivers 2 and Destiny 2 for future projects, adding the following. We look forward to showcasing our progress with Marathon, a game that has seen no shortage of controversy recently. Well, wow, so he's actually directly addressing the controversy of Marathon, which I find to be ironic because usually when a game is littered in controversy, they're usually not, trying to, I guess, admit it, but whatever. Helldivers 2, the large jewel is Sony's live service crown, was dubbed a resounding critical and commercial success by Holtz, who highlighted both its ability to retain a passionate community and win industry awards. They're really holding on to Helldivers 2. They're holding on to Helldivers 2 as being their poster child for, we could totally make all these live service games work. I've said it before and I'll say it again. There's only so many customers for live service games. It's like not everybody wants a live service experience. When you look at these numbers for a lot of the games that Sony has released and other people have released as well, a lot of the player base are playing these massive single player experiences. Look at Stellar Blade, for example. Stellar Blade is Sony's number 2, I believe, top concurrent player count game on Steam behind Helldivers, and it's their number 1 single player concurrent game on Steam, if I'm not mistaken. You can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, But that's where they're at. And that's a single player game. You could talk about, oh, it's a gooter game, all you, whatever, bro. The absolute cope. But at the end of the day, it's a single player game and it's trouncing all their live service games. The majority of players want really good experiences that they can play in their time without feeling like they're missing out on something without being online every day, right? The problem with live service games is you develop FOMO and you feel like you're missing out on something if you're not playing every day. And eventually, if you feel like you got left behind, well, you're probably going to stop playing. Whereas with a single player game, you could pick it up and play at your leisure and not have to worry about any of that. Regardless, apparently, he's going to use Helldivers 2 and Destiny as an excuse and a reason to double down on live service games. He called Marathon innovative and bold, which I can't help but laugh. Again, innovative and bold. There's nothing innovative and bold, by the way, about Marathon, right? It's just another extraction shooter with the typical modern audience art style on it. There's nothing innovative and bold about it whatsoever. But of course, again, as a CEO of the company, he has to sell it. I get it. No other compliments were offered to Bungie's upcoming extraction shooter, though the accompanying slide noted strong early engagement as its prime achievement so far. Strong early engagement. What is with these people flat out lying and taking all of the negative sentiment around their video games and trying to say, oh yeah, the community sentiment is positive? You know who was the last person to try to do that? Ubisoft. You know who had to sell 25% of their company and all of their prime video games to an Asian company? Ubisoft, because they weren't doing that well. No matter how much they try to make it seem like everybody loves their games and community sentiment is so amazing, they still had to sell off their company and split and do a 25% stake to Tencent with their three biggest IPs that they own. So clearly they weren't doing that well. But in any case, an interesting perspective to be sure, at least as far as Marathon is concerned. While much of what Holtz said about Helldivers 2 is true, the game has managed to remain a fantastic success story for the industry giant. Marathon has found itself on the receiving end of some exceptional problems, which, by the way, they still have not addressed the problems whatsoever. All they said was that they totally stole the art, and that's the last thing that we heard about it. We haven't heard anything else from the developers, the studio, Sony, nothing. Nobody has said a single thing after admitting they stole the art. And it is completely quiet. It is a ghost town. And apparently the game is still coming out on the day it's supposed to come out. So I don't know. I guess we're going to see. The strong early sentiment noted in the presentation doesn't reflect the available player figures for the game's closed alpha. During this short-lived test, Marathon shed roughly 80% of its initial alpha player base as far as engagement via discussion. Marathon's many problems dominated the conversation, such as locked three-player format and lack of feasible solo mode, repetitive nature, and lack of crucial extraction shooter features such as proximity voice and more. So again, at this point, ladies and gentlemen, I really don't even know what to make of this. It's honestly kind of sad. You know, I really am. I'm sick of the live service crap. I really am. I think a lot of people are, to be fair. You know, the live service games, they're very formulaic because everybody's trying to copy each other, right? Everybody's trying to copy each other. Everybody's trying to make it seem like, you know, they're totally being innovative and bold. But at the end of the day, it's literally just the same shit. Nobody wants to be creative anymore. And they're all chasing the trend of extraction shooters right now. They did the same exact thing with Battle Royale games where they were chasing that trend. And the people that were able to be creative enough to stand out, they succeeded. And everybody else, well, nobody talks about their games anymore because they're either dead or they're just hanging on by a thread. Right? It's the same thing that's going to happen with extraction shooters, and whether or not Marathon could actually stand the test of time, well, that's going to be based off how many people are actually going to support the game, who are most likely going to be hardcore Bungie fanboys that are going to start to support, and whether or not they can garner more after that, well, that's up to the game itself. But one of the biggest merits, apparently, of Marathon was its aesthetic, which was soon soured due to an art plagiarism scandal. Bungie admitted to the use of external art in the game's development process, blaming it on a former employee and committing to a full audit of in-game assets in order to remove any stolen artwork. Has anybody heard anything from the full audit of in-game assets? Has anybody heard a single thing? I haven't heard anything about them auditing the in-game assets. What was the outcome of this? I mean, how long could this really take? Let's be real. They're just simply trying to stay quiet and hope that people forget and let everything blow down and blow away. But it's not going to happen, bro. In any case, this situation would reportedly send morale at Bungie into a free fall, which obviously has seen the replacement of the creative director, which we just recently did in another video. And then we got Fair Games, aka Robin Hood for the modern audience, which hasn't been shown off much since its initial reveal, if at all. A cooperative heist game. It was recently delayed due to the studio founder Jade Raymond departing for greener pastures. This came following worrying external tests, according to a report from Bloomberg. So both of these games, both of these games are completely surrounded by controversy, and for rightful reasons. You got Marathon stealing the entire identity of the game from an artist. You got Fair Games. Literally nothing has been shown. No gameplay has ever been shown. Only one cinematic has been shown, and then it's just been radio silence. And then the founder of the studio that was making this game decided to leave in the middle of development. It's very clear, just like with Mind's Eye, there is a lot of red flags that are on the field right now. And if people are choosing to ignore the red flags, well, that's their fault then, because this is one of the biggest red flags of all. If the game was doing well, if things were okay over at Fair Games, the founder would have not left. I want to be very clear about that. The founder would not have left. The fact that the founder left during development is a big, big issue, in my opinion. So I guess we'll see what ends up happening with these two games that Sony just absolutely refuses to either fix or just cancel at this point. They're going to double down. They're going to ensure these games come out. And when they come out and eventually fail, although I think Fair Games is going to fail more than Marathon. I think Marathon, I've always said this, will have an initial support from the Bungie fanboys, like the Destiny players and everything like that. But I think that whether or not it survives is going to be based off the actual merit of the game, which I'm not completely sold on considering what's going on. But when these games eventually release and they inevitably underperform, because they're definitely going to underperform. If you don't want to say it's going to fail, fine. But I could definitely say that it's going to underperform. Then eventually it's going to get to a point where they're going to say, just like with Ubisoft, oh, the game's fine. Everybody loves it. We're doing totally fine. Everything's good. And then Concord happens and the game shuts. Keep in mind, Concord did the same exact thing. They said that all the hate that the game was getting was just white noise and the game was perfectly fine, and that they have plans to support the game for years to come. That is a literal statement from a developer, the head developer over at Firewalk Studios, well, what used to be Firewalk Studios. They actually said that it was all white noise and that they have plans to support the game for years to come. And then 7 days later, the game was shut down. So when these companies eventually, because you know what's coming, they're going to tell you, oh, everything's fine with these games. We totally promise. And you see the numbers for what they are. And I guarantee you, they're not going to be pretty. At this point, I think it's pretty safe to say that perhaps you should probably step away from the live service, nonsense, and maybe go back to what everybody likes you for, which is strong single player narrative experiences, whether they're action, RPG, whatever. Start delivering those blockbuster experiences again, because that's what you're remembered for. Nobody cares about your live service games. Helldivers 2 was a success. Congratulations. Great for you. Write out that game and go back to making games people actually want to play. But you can let me know in the comments down below. What do you think about this doubling down? Do you think Sony's doing the right thing? You think I'm wrong? That's perfectly fine. You can tell me. Or if you think I'm not wrong and you think this is ridiculous, you can also let me know in the comments down below. Thank you guys so much for watching the video, and special shout out to the 90,000 plus that are subscribed to the channel. And if you're not subscribed, consider hitting that subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one.